Hello again. Now, today I want to show you something that I've been working on for quite a while, and I don't know if you've ever heard the term Mahl stick. That's M-A-H-L. Sometimes it's called a Mahl stick, M-A-U-L, a Mahl stick, a Mahl stock if you come from Scandinavia, or a painter's rest. It was a long time. I don't do much painting these days in terms of pictures, but it was a long time before I worked out how an artist was able to hold his hand with his brush in it steady enough to work on a canvas for hours at a time. It's okay for the first 10 minutes, but after that you start to get a bit tired. And the answer is one of these. That's a simple enough thing, really. You can see it's just a pole, a bit of dowel with a ball on the end. Sometimes they would use a walking stick, I suppose, or just a piece of blackthorn that they'd got out of a hedge. You could use anything, but people like to make them, and I tried, and in fact I've made quite a lot. A proper artist or craftsman would make it out of a tree and a cow. I bought doweling, and I bought these hardwood birch balls and drilled a hole in them, glued onto the dowel that I'd already bought, French polished the dowel and popped either a copper or a silver plated cap on the end, and there you have it. That's oak, that one. I made them, when I started I made short ones, and I made them with pine dowel, which is very cheap to come by and easy to come by. Some padding on the end of the ball, and then leather. You can buy leather scraps, leather samples very cheaply, and I just wrapped, with the help of my dear lady wife, wrapped around the top, tied it, and there you have a Mahl stick. And I made, as with the paintbrushes, you see a different colour for each colour of paint that I'm going to put on the gnome that I'm painting. I've made a different coloured Mahl stick as well. Silver plated cap on the end of this one, and I've made them out of different woods. This is walnut, this one, and that's what walnut looks like when you put French polish on it. There's beech, I think, that one. This is tulip wood. I've made them in ash. I've made them in probably about 10 different sorts of wood, but the one that I found it very difficult to get hold of was ebony. It's not only quite rare, it's expensive, but I managed it. Now, the way I managed it was by contacting someone I know a long way away. His name's Andy Coates, and his business as a craftsman, he calls it Cobweb Crafts. He's based in Beccles in Suffolk. Lovely chap. And I initially asked him if he knew where I could get hold of ebony, and he said no, but I've got 2 pieces. And here are the 2 pieces that he cut for me, turned for me on his lathe from 2 chunks of wood. And it's heartwood ebony. Apparently he tells me this tree was felled in the late 60s in Gabon in Africa, and it's been stored in a variety of sheds and warehouses ever since, and he's had it for years and years, and he did this to it for me. He inset bolts in there, so it's a 2-piece, and nuts in the other end, so it becomes a a longer reach, I sourced these ebony balls, and Andy set the nuts in there, so it has become this. And then I asked for a silver, solid silver end cap. I thought if the wood is as expensive as this and the work that's gone into it is as expensive, I would have a solid silver end cap to it. And unfortunately, when they made it, it came back too big, and it took months and months and months for it to be made. It came back too big for the end of the wood that I was going to fix it onto. So we went to a different stage, and I had this thing made out of copper. And I asked the gentleman at Kenworth Engineering, Oliver Rowbotham, to turn this down to the dimension of that, but then to have it splayed so it comes out to the correct dimension to put the silver end cap onto. And there it is. And if I wish to, I can change the end cap to a stainless steel one and use it as a walking stick, or a brass one, and I can have lots more of those if I choose to. Unique is a word that is misused. It's an absolute adjective. It means you can't be very unique or slightly unique. It's a bit like being half dead or almost pregnant. You can't. You're either one or the other. You're not. There's no graduation. This, I believe, to be unique, because even if you had all the various bits made and you had the end inscribed as I have with a matte Victoria Curum, which means victory loves preparation, if you had the brass fittings and the ebony ball and it balanced just as this one does perfectly well, you still wouldn't be able to get that pattern in the ebony. This is unique. I am now going to French polish this, the wood. So I'll take this to pieces. There is another addition to this. You've seen the others have got a leather top. Well, I'm currently having made some little leather bags to go over the top, which will tie. A padded one first and then a leather one over the top of that. And it'll tie up here, and then you're not going to damage either the wood or your canvas or whatever it is you're leaning it against. So I'll take this to pieces and I'll show you just exactly how we're going to do what we're going to do. That can come straight off. Quite a cheap snooker cue case which I've adapted on the inside to carry it around in. I would like to make a separate drawer that it goes in when it's not travelling, and that would be velvet lined, but we're not there yet. So with French polish, I've got a bottle of it here. It's the excretions of the lac beetle. Mainly Indonesia, Thailand, places like that, which is then dried into big sheets, smashed up into flakes, and the flakes are dissolved in what they call denatured alcohol, which is, in this country, it's methylated spirits. Denatured alcohol is just to stop you drinking it. They put all sorts of dirty, horrible, nasty chemicals in it, benzene and stuff that would make you go blind or die. However, they melt the flakes of lac flakes in there, in the meths. You give it a good shake, goes off after about a year, and And then when you put that on the wood, you'll see what it did to that piece of walnut. It gives it a nice deep shine, changes the colour, but protects it. Now before you put neat French polish on it, it wants a coat of thin, and this has been thinned even more with meths. So I'll pour some of that in here, and because we're taking our time over this, I'll put even more meths in it. And we'll give it a stir. Now, as I've said to you before you put anything in the way of paint or polish on anything at all, you need to know where it's going to go. Where is it going to stand to dry? So I need to work out what I'm going to stand it in or lean it on. I wonder if, because there's a bolt in either end, it might sit nicely in here. I've got some more brushes drying, and they're ready for a second coat. Which I should be doing later. Let me just try this. I think that will do. I think we'll get away with that. As long as I don't knock it off when I walk past, which is always a possibility. Maybe in here. Yeah. I'm going to risk that. It dries quite quickly, so it'll not be there for very long. So, let's have a look at this then. I want the mixture to run that way down the pole, so it's not staining this nice brass fitting too much. And initially I'm going to put it on with a brush. So you will see the colour change as I put this on. There, you can already see, isn't that beautiful? What that is going to look like when it's finished. And we're going to be at this for some time. The first coat will just be a base, very much like when we put red oxide primer on the paintbrush handles. This base will dry, and we'll give it more. I could just keep going with it this thin over and over again, but it might take years rather than weeks, and nobody wants that. There. Are you able to see the difference between the two? Let's try this one. Now I'm going to have to stand it to touch the end of this, which I don't really want to do, but I will. Now, as I say, when it's this thin it dries very quickly, so I might even manage to get a couple of coats on before I finish. Let's see. Has this dried? Oh yes, that's dry already. So we just carry on. Oops, wrong way around. There are not many Mahl sticks around that belonged to famous people. William Hogarth, the artist, I think he's 17th century Hogarth, his is still around. Oh, there's a picture of it, I've seen anyway. Can't seem to find any evidence of anybody else's. Picasso, Constable, any of the old masters. Maybe they used one, maybe they didn't, maybe they were so disposable like their paintbrushes that they just haven't survived. Which is a shame, because I'd like to see them and see how they compared to mine in both terms of weight and length and durability. All dry. Swidry. Okay, so 2 coats of thinned shellac, and it is very thin, this. You can tell by how quickly it's dried. And then I shan't put it on with a paintbrush. I shall use a cloth. Now, French polishers, when they're doing tables and things like that, they do make a thing called a rubber. And it's exactly what it says. It's what you use to rub the French polish in, and it's a ball of cotton wadding wrapped in some cotton, and they feed the wadding underneath with the French polish, the shellac, and just rub very thin coats on in tiny little circles, a little bit like polishing a pair of shoes, and that is done over and over again until they get the finish they require. And I spoke to a gentleman who was a time-served French polisher, and he said his piece that he had to do for his apprenticeship, 6 weeks. I think he said it was a piano. But 6 weeks. And I said, how many hours? And he said, oh, only an hour a day. 1 hour a day, just on this same piece. Because, to be honest, you don't want to be breathing this stuff in for too long. I won't say it's deadly toxic. You certainly wouldn't want to drink it. But breathing it in for hours at a time isn't a great idea either. So I shall stop at my 2 coats on here and try desperately hard not to knock it off at the end. And this can go back in its bottle. I shall wash that in meths, and after that I'm going to make a start on this next batch of paintbrushes. So there we are, Mahl sticks, part of what's going to be a 6-dimensional project, 6-dimensional piece of art. I'll tell you next time what those 6 dimensions are going to be. I wonder if you can work it out before then. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye bye for now.